You know, when I was younger, I never imagined there'd come a day when I'd be living alone, but here I am at 75 years old, experiencing something unique and full of learning opportunities. Living alone in your golden years is like embarking on a journey of self-discovery. It's a chance to explore our independence, find inner peace, and get to know ourselves better. I remember the day my kids left home. It was a mix of pride and apprehension, but over time, I realized that this new phase of life could be very rewarding. Of course, it's not all roses. There are unique challenges that arise when we decide to live alone or find ourselves in that situation. Sometimes loneliness knocks at the door. Other times we catch ourselves wondering if we'll be able to handle everything on our own. But don't worry. With time, we learn to deal with these issues. Over the years, I've talked with many friends who also live alone, and I've realized that our experiences are similar. We share joys, difficulties, and most importantly, lessons learned. That's why I decided to record this video, to share with you some essential tips I've learned on this journey. My goal is to help you avoid some pitfalls that can arise when living alone in your senior years. I want you to make the most of this phase of life, with safety, health, and lots of joy. So, shall we begin? Prepare your cup of tea, settle into your armchair, and let's talk about how to make this experience of living alone truly special. Main content 1. Cultivate social connections. My dear friends, the first thing I learned living alone is that we can't isolate ourselves. I remember when I became a widower about 10 years ago. At first, I barely left the house. I'd go days without talking to anyone except the building's doorman. That's when I realized this wasn't doing me any good. It's very important to keep in touch with the people we love and make new friends. Don't let the fact that you live alone keep you away from others. You know what I started doing? Every day I call one of my children or grandchildren, even if it's just to say, "Hi, how are you?" It makes all the difference in my day. Another thing that helped me a lot was volunteering. I started helping at the neighborhood library twice a week. I met wonderful people and I feel useful. If you like animals, how about offering to walk dogs from a shelter? Or if you prefer something quieter, you can knit hats to donate to hospitals. The important thing is not to stay isolated. Invite friends over for coffee, participate in community center activities, join a walking group. The possibilities are endless. Remember, maintaining social connections not only makes us happier, but is also great for our mental and physical health. 2. Prioritize your health. Speaking of health, my friends, this is a fundamental part of living alone. I confess that at first, it was a challenge. With no one to remind me to take my medications or encourage me to exercise, it was easy to neglect my health, but I soon realized that if I wanted to stay independent, I needed to take good care of my health. I started by creating a routine. Every morning after breakfast, I take a 30-minute walk in the park near my house. At first, it was difficult to create the habit, but now I miss it when I don't go. To not forget my medications, I use one of those pill organizers with compartments for each day of the week. Every Monday morning, I separate the medications for the entire week. I also set an alarm on my cell phone to remind me of the times. And we can't forget about mental health. Sometimes living alone can get us down a bit. What helps me a lot is meditation. Every night before bed, I do 10 minutes of breathing and relaxation. Believe me, it makes all the difference in sleeping well and waking up, feeling refreshed. Oh, and don't forget to go to the doctor regularly. I schedule all my checkup appointments at the beginning of the year and put them on the kitchen calendar. That way, there's no way to forget. Remember, taking care of your health isn't a luxury, it's a necessity, especially when we live alone. 3. Ensure your safety. My dears, when we talk about living alone in our senior years, safety should be a priority. I confess that at first, I didn't give it much importance, but after a small scare, I slipped in the bathroom and was unable to get up for almost an hour. I realized I needed to take some measures. The first thing I did was install grab bars in the bathroom. It might seem trivial, but it makes all the difference. I also put non-slip strips on the staircase steps and replaced all the rugs with non-slip models. Another important thing is lighting. I installed motion sensor, lights in the hallways and at the entrance of the house. This way, I'm never in the dark, which reduces the risk of trips and falls. An investment I made that gives me a lot of peace of mind is an emergency system. It's a button that hangs around my neck. If something happens, I just press it and it automatically calls for help. It might seem like overkill, but I feel much safer knowing I have this resource. Oh, and don't forget to keep emergency numbers always at hand. I have a list stuck on the fridge with the phone numbers of my children, my doctor, and emergency services. You never know when we're going to need them, right? 4. Avoid harmful habits. You know what's funny, my friends? When we start living alone, sometimes we fall into some traps without even realizing it. In my case, it was with food. With no one to cook with or to cook for, I started eating a lot of junk food. I remember going through a phase where I ate only sandwiches and instant soup. It was practical, but far from healthy. I noticed I was feeling tired and without energy. That's when I decided to change. I started planning my meals in advance. Every Sunday, I make a list of what I'm going to cook during the week and go shopping. I discovered that I like cooking while listening to the radio. It's almost become a ritual. I make enough food for 2 or 3 meals so I don't have to cook every day. Another habit I had to change was being sedentary. It was so easy to spend the whole day sitting in front of the TV. Now I've set a goal to take at least 5,000 steps a day. I use one of those watches that count steps. It's almost become a competition with myself. And we can't forget about sleep, can we? I went through a period of going to bed very late and waking up later and later. That messed up my whole day. Now I have a set time to go to bed and to wake up. It makes all the difference in how I feel. The important thing is to create healthy goals and routines. It can be difficult at first, but over time it becomes a habit, and our body thanks us. 5. Simplify your space. My dears, this is a lesson that took me a while to learn. When the kids left home, I ended up living alone in a huge house. At first, I thought it was great to have so much space. But over time, I realized it was becoming difficult to keep up with everything. Cleaning that big house was quite a challenge. Not to mention the maintenance. There was always a leak here, peeling paint there. That's when I decided to downsize. As the young folks say, I sold the big house and moved to a smaller but much more practical apartment. Now I have just the space I really need and use. It's much easier to clean and organize. And the best part, I have more time and energy left to do the things I really enjoy. Of course, it wasn't easy to get rid of. So many things accumulated over the years, but it was a liberating process. Donating objects that I no longer used made me feel good, knowing that other people could make use of what was no longer useful to me. If you're not ready to move yet, how about starting by simplifying one room at a time? Start with the guest room that turned into a storage room, or the garage full of junk. You'll see how much lighter you feel. And remember, there's no shame in asking for help. If cleaning or maintaining the house is becoming difficult, consider hiring someone to help, even if it's just once a month. Your health and well-being are worth the investment. 6. Keep your purpose alive. My friends, this might be the most important tip of all. When we retire and start living alone, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking our life has lost its purpose. Nothing could be further from the truth. I remember when I retired, for the first few months, it was a party. I slept late, watched TV all day, but soon I started to feel empty. That's when I realized I needed to find a new purpose. I started exploring old and new hobbies. I went back to painting, something I loved in my youth but had abandoned. I also ventured into gardening. You should see how beautiful my balcony is now. But what really changed my life was volunteer work. I started teaching adult literacy classes twice a week. Seeing the sparkle in someone's eyes when they managed to read for the first time, there's no better feeling. The important thing is to find something that motivates you, that makes you want to get out of bed every morning with enthusiasm. It could be learning a new language, doing volunteer work, taking care of grandchildren, writing your memoirs. The possibilities are endless. Having a purpose not only keeps us active and engaged, but is also great for our mental health. It makes us feel useful, important. And believe me, we all have something valuable to offer the world, no matter our age. 7. Don't hesitate to ask for help. My dears, this is a lesson I learned the hard way. At the beginning of my journey living alone, I had this fixed idea that I needed to do everything on my own. After all, I wanted to prove to myself and to others that I was capable of managing on my own. The result? I ended up overloading myself and getting stressed. It was only when I almost fell, trying to change a light bulb, I'm no longer young enough to climb ladders, that I realized there's nothing wrong with asking for help. I learned that asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. On the contrary, it's a sign of wisdom. Now, when I need to do some repair at home, I call my son-in-law or a neighbor. For heavier cleaning tasks, I hired a housekeeper who comes once a month, and it's not just for practical tasks that we can ask for help. If we're feeling lonely or sad, we shouldn't hesitate to call a friend or family member. Sometimes just talking already makes us feel better. Another thing I discovered was community support. At the community center in my neighborhood, for example, there's a support group for seniors who live alone. Participating in these meetings made me realize that I'm not alone in my difficulties, and I learned many valuable tips from other participants. Remember, asking for help doesn't diminish our independence. In fact, knowing when we need support allows us to live more safely and happily for longer. Don't be ashamed to ask for help when you need it. 8. Take care of your environment. My friends, how important it is to keep our house in order when we live alone. I confess that at first, when I became a widower, I let the mess take over. Clothes scattered around, dishes piled up in the sink. I thought it didn't make a difference since I was alone anyway, but I soon realized how that disorder affected my mood and even my health. A disorganized house can be dangerous. It's easier to trip over objects left on the floor, for example. Not to mention that the accumulation of dust and dirt isn't good for our lungs. That's when I decided to create an organization routine. Every morning after breakfast, I dedicate half an hour to tidying up the house. I make the bed, wash the breakfast dishes, give the living room a once-over. It seems like little, but it makes all the difference. I also learned the importance of keeping everything in its place. Now each object has its specific spot. So, I never waste time looking for keys or glasses. A tip that works very well for me is the 5-minute rule. If something can be done in 5 minutes or less, I do it right away. Putting away groceries, folding clothes, watering plants. These small tasks, when done immediately, prevent clutter from accumulating. And don't forget about safety. Keep corridors and stairs free of obstacles. Tuck away loose wires. Take care of lighting. An organized and safe environment allows us to live with more tranquility and independence for much longer. Remember, a clean and organized environment is not only safer, but also does wonders for our mental well-being. It's much more pleasant to relax in a tidy house. 9. Establish a routine. My dears, when I started living alone, one of the things I missed most was routine. Without work commitments or the presence of family, the days started to blend together. That's when I realized I needed to create a new structure for my days. Establishing a routine might seem boring at first glance, but believe me, it makes all the difference. I started by setting fixed times to wake up and go to sleep. This helped regulate my sleep and made me feel more energetic during the day. Then I started adding other activities. For example, every morning after coffee, I take a walk in the park on Tuesdays, and Thursdays I go to the community center for Tai Chi classes. On Wednesday afternoons, I meet my friends to play dominoes. But be careful, the routine doesn't need to and shouldn't be too rigid. Leave room for spontaneity and different activities. The important thing is to have a basic structure that gives us a sense of purpose and organization. A tip that works well for me is using a large calendar on the kitchen wall. I write down all my activities, doctor's appointments, and commitments. This way, I start the day knowing exactly what I have to do. Having a routine not only helps us organize our time better, but also contributes to our mental health. It gives us a sense of control over our lives and reduces anxiety. And the best part, it helps us make the most of each day. 10. Let go of sentimentality. Ah, my friends, this is a delicate subject, isn't it? When we live in the same place for many years, it's natural to accumulate many things, objects that carry memories, gifts from loved ones, things we think we might need. Someday I remember when I decided to move to a smaller apartment, I looked around and thought, how am I going to get rid of all this? Each object seemed to tell a story from my life, but I soon realized that keeping everything was weighing me down, literally. My house was full of things I rarely used, and this only made cleaning and organizing more difficult. That's when I started practicing detachment. I started with the easiest items, clothes that no longer fit, duplicate kitchen utensils, books I knew I wouldn't read again. For objects with sentimental value, I adopted a strategy. If I hadn't used or looked at it in the past year, it was time to let it go. Of course, I kept some special items, but for others I found alternatives. For example, instead of keeping all the old letters I received, I chose some special ones and made an album with them. The others, I photographed and saved the images on the computer. The process of letting go wasn't easy, but it was liberating. My space became lighter, easier to maintain, and I discovered that the important memories stay with me, even without the physical objects. Remember, our lives are not defined by the things we own, but by the experiences we live and the people we love. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means making room for new experiences and memories. 11. Be prepared for emergencies. My dears, this is a subject that no one likes to think about much, but it's extremely important, especially when we live alone. Unexpected events happen, and it's better to be prepared, isn't it? I remember once when we had a blackout in the neighborhood, I spent hours in the dark, not knowing what to do. That's when I realized I needed a plan for situations like this. The first thing I did was put together an emergency kit I put in a box that's easy to reach. A flashlight with extra batteries, a portable radio, bottled water, some non-perishable food, basic medications, and a list of important phone numbers. I also made an action plan for different types of emergencies. For example, I identified the emergency exits in my building and arranged with my neighbor to check on each other in case of an evacuation. Another important thing: keep your important documents organized and easy to find. I have a folder with copies of my documents, medical information, and emergency contacts. My children know where this folder is in case they need it. And we can't forget about health. I always have an extra stock of my continuous use medications at home. You never know when a flu or other unforeseen event might prevent us from going to the pharmacy, right? Being prepared for emergencies gives us peace of mind. We know that whatever happens, we have a plan. And that, my friends, makes all the difference when we live alone. 12. Keep your finances in order. Oops, we've come to a subject that many people avoid, haven't we? But let's go. Talking about money is important, especially when we live alone in our senior years. When I retired, I confess I was a bit lost with finances. The income decreased, but the bills kept coming. That's when I realized I needed to organize my money better. I started by making a monthly budget. I write down all my fixed expenses, rent, electricity, water, health insurance, and see how much is left for other necessities and some small luxuries. I use a little notebook for this, but I know some people prefer to use the computer or cell phone apps. A tip that works well for me is separating money into envelopes at the beginning of the month. One envelope for bills, another for food, another for leisure. This way, I can control expenses better. I also learned the importance of having an emergency reserve. Every month, I save a little, even if it's a small amount. You never know when we'll need to replace an appliance or get medical treatment not covered by health insurance, right? And don't be ashamed to seek help if finances get complicated. Many banks offer financial guidance for retirees, or if you prefer, ask a trusted family member for help. Remember, keeping finances organized isn't being cheap. It's ensuring our tranquility and financial independence. After all, we want to enjoy this phase of life without worries, don't we? Conclusion: living with wisdom and purpose. Well, my dear friends, we've come to the end of our conversation. I hope these tips and experiences I've shared can help you live better on this journey of living alone in your senior years. As we've seen, the secret is to focus on our health, safety, and well-being. We can't forget to take care of our body and mind, keep our space organized and safe, and cultivate meaningful relationships with friends and family. Living alone in our senior years can be a challenge, but it's also an incredible opportunity for self-discovery and personal growth. It's a time to value our independence, but without isolating ourselves from the world. Remember, each of us has a unique story, full of experiences and wisdom. Using this knowledge to live well and with purpose is the best way to enjoy this phase of life. And you, what experiences do you have to share? About living alone? What challenges have you faced and what joys have you discovered? I'd love to know. Leave your comments down below. Let's exchange ideas and learn from each other. If you like this video and want more tips on how to live well in your senior years, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss any new videos. Closing. I want to thank all of you who stayed until the end, listening to the stories and advice of this old friend. Know that each of you is special and has a lot to offer the world, no matter your age. Living alone can be a challenge, but it can also be one of the most rewarding experiences of our lives. It's an opportunity to rediscover ourselves, create new habits, make new friends. Always remember, you're not really alone. There's a whole community around us, ready to support us. Don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it, nor to offer help when you can stay curious, keep learning, keep loving. Life is a wonderful adventure, and each day is a new opportunity to live fully. Until the next video, my dears, take good care of yourselves and remember, the best age is the one we're living now. Let's make the most of every moment.